I used to think I was pretty good with money. Not great, not terrible, just decent. I didn't buy designer clothes. I didn't have credit card debt. I cooked at home more often than not, and I even had a small emergency fund sitting in a savings account I barely checked. In my mind, that made me financially responsible. But one night, out of pure curiosity, I checked my bank statement for the month and noticed something that didn't sit right with me. My checking account was lighter than it should have been. I'd gotten paid just 3 weeks ago, but already more than half of my paycheck was gone. And the worst part? I couldn't explain where it went. There was no big emergency, no unexpected bill, just a slow, invisible leak. That's when it hit me. I had no real idea where my money was going. I thought I was in control, but I was guessing. So, right then and there, I made a decision that would change everything. For the next 30 days, I would track every single penny I spent. Not just the big stuff, not just groceries and rent. I mean everything. Every dollar, every coin, every moment of financial friction. If I spent it, I'd write it down. No excuses. The first few days were surprisingly annoying. I had to break the habit of paying without thinking. I downloaded a spreadsheet, kept receipts, even jotted things down in my phone. At first, I tracked out of obligation. Then something shifted. The act of tracking started making me more aware, not just of what I spent, but why I spent it. Suddenly, I saw the $1.99 apps I never used, the $3 ATM fees I kept swallowing, the $9.99 subscriptions I swore I'd cancel next month. Each number wasn't just a transaction. It was a decision I had made without even realizing it. And that realization? It was brutal. By the end of week 1, patterns were already surfacing. I was shocked by how often I swiped my card for convenience. $6 for a sandwich when I had groceries at home. $4 for bottled water, even though I owned a reusable one. I wasn't just leaking money, I was handing it away without thought. Small amounts, sure, but when you're doing it multiple times a day, every day, it adds up quickly. I started seeing where my money wasn't going, toward savings, toward goals, toward the life I wanted. It was being eaten alive by tiny choices I never questioned. What surprised me even more was the emotional side. I always thought spending was a simple math equation. Need plus price equals purchase. But it's not. I realized I spent most impulsively when I felt tired, bored, anxious, or sad. A coffee meant escape. A snack meant comfort. A new hoodie meant feeling good for 5 minutes. The spending was never about the stuff. It was about filling something inside me. That was the hardest truth to face. It was like turning on a light in a room I didn't know was messy, and once the light was on, I couldn't unsee it. The tracking process turned into a personal audit, not just of my wallet, but of my priorities, my habits, even my sense of identity. I started asking new questions. Why do I think I deserve this latte after a long day? Why do I keep telling myself that $5 doesn't matter? Why do I treat money like it's infinite when it's not? The numbers didn't lie, but what they revealed was far deeper than money. By the start of week 2, something unexpected began to happen. I started spending less, without even trying. Not because I forced myself to be frugal, but because I was finally paying attention. Every dollar now felt heavier, more real. A $12 lunch wasn't just a meal anymore. It was 4 hours of freedom I could have bought later. A late-night Amazon scroll wasn't just harmless browsing. It was self-sabotage with 2-day shipping. Suddenly, every purchase carried weight, and that weight changed my behavior more than any budget ever had. I didn't feel restricted. I felt empowered. Tracking gave me clarity, and clarity gave me control. I wasn't guessing anymore. I was choosing. I could see the financial bleed from mindless routines and emotional triggers, and I could stop it. I canceled 3 subscriptions I never used. I started brewing my own coffee again, not because I had to, but because I finally saw the real cost of convenience. I started walking instead of Ubering short distances, not because I was broke, but because I respected my money now. Every small choice stopped being whatever and became intentional. What shocked me most wasn't how much I had been wasting, but how little I actually needed to feel good. I realized how many purchases were just distractions, ways to avoid being still. Once I sat with the discomfort, boredom, stress, comparison, it started to fade, and in that space, I found something rare: peace. I no longer needed to chase the dopamine rush of buying. I started feeling proud after not spending. That was new. That was powerful. By week 3, the results became undeniable. I had saved more in 20 days than I had in the last 3 months combined. But more importantly, I knew why. There was no mystery anymore. My financial anxiety started to lift, not because I made more money, but because I had replaced ignorance with awareness. For the first time, I wasn't afraid to check my balance. I knew exactly what I'd find, and I liked it. And it went deeper. My values started shifting. I found myself asking better questions. Instead of "Can I afford this?" I asked, "Is this worth it to me?" Instead of "Do I need it?" I asked, "What am I trying to feel by buying it?" The questions weren't always comfortable, but they were necessary, and with each answer I felt more free. I also realized something crucial. I wasn't just learning how to spend better, I was learning how to live better. I began to notice how much of my life had been on autopilot: swipe, confirm, regret, repeat. Now I was present, mindful. I even started applying this awareness to other areas: time, food, energy. Because when you start tracking money, you start valuing everything. You stop leaking not just cash, but attention, intention, potential. The biggest shock? I didn't need a raise to feel wealthy. I needed clarity. I needed to stop numbing and start noticing. And when I did, when I really truly saw my money for what it was, I finally understood.